Hello, and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast, where we interview runners of all stages in their running career about their first marathon experiences to prove that anyone can run a marathon. My name is Taylor, and I love today's chat because we get a unique experience from somebody who's only been seriously running for about the last 5 months or so. After a scary MS diagnosis, he knew he needed to introduce more movement into his life and started walking every day, which eventually turned into running. In this time, he ran his first half and first full marathon. And since everything is so fresh on his mind from this experience, we go into a lot of detail about what this whole journey has been like for him. For you newer runners, you're really going to like hearing this one. So without further ado, please welcome John. John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this weekend. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. We were just chatting about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
I love that we get so many different types of runners on this podcast. And I think you have a pretty unique experience so far because you've been running for 3, 4, 5 months. How long has it been
Yeah.
at this point?
Yeah, I really started, I always call it, I refer to it as like conscious running.
Yeah.
So of course I've ran in my life and I'm 39 now. So in my 20s, I would try to run and stuff, but it's difficult and never thought about it in a real way. So conscious running started February of this year.
Cool.
So however many months that would be right now, I could do the math by fingers, but so February, so pretty recent, like actually taking it kind of serious and diving in on the world of running.
Cool. So yeah, so all this is really, really fresh on your mind, which I think is great. We get a lot of people that listen that are in the same position as you. So I'm excited to hear about it.
Cool.
So I guess to start from the beginning, you said that you had been off and on with running in the past. Where did your relationship with kind of movement start?
Yeah, so I've always like tried to be active and not very successful at it, maybe not approaching it in the right ways or so throughout my 20s and I have a sister who's like always been a personal trainer, who's older than me, so maybe that was a mix. But really like movement and like looking at making this a part of my daily routine, not running yet, starting like 2022. So I went through like a whole health journey, and I talk about it like on my Instagram, my socials and stuff like that. But, I found myself like in the emergency room, newborn baby, dad of 2, and I was having some weird symptoms. I went to my primary and explained them and they sent me to ER. And so like I was going through a mode of facing, a diagnosis of MS actually. So I went through this whole experience. I was living pretty unhealthy lifestyle, not movement wasn't like a part of my daily routine and all that stuff. So I just started diving in on things that can maybe help my situation through lifestyle, through food. And so I just started walking. So I would really say like my movement was like trying to fix my situation, which usually comes from like inflammation essentially. By walking it off. Like that was the thought process. Like just go walk this off. So I was doing like 20 to 45 minute walks a day. And that was for about 2 years. Cause I dealt with like in my legs, like some nerve damage.
Okay.
When everything happened. So my biggest thought process, like wanting to remove that feeling. So running to me felt scary of like it could cause muscle soreness. And would I know if it was this or from running or whatever? So I didn't do it. And then one day I did a little bit here and there about 2 years into just walking every day. And then, slowly started like maybe adopting some running or just trying to a little bit mixing running and walking when out. And then one day in February, I just decided like, I'm going to try and just go for like a run. And I came back and, I did 2 miles and I was blown away that I did that without having to stop. And that just like fired me up and like put me on a movement of like, go get running shoes and like really take it seriously. Which led to, marathon, half marathon, all that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So MS diagnosis, I have a family member that also has been diagnosed with MS. And I know
Mhm.
that can just like, when you get that diagnosis, it can kind of like, you've got so many thoughts going through
Oh,
your head
yeah.
about what do I do with this information? So
Yeah.
when that was coming up, like, were you getting outside like suggestions on what you should be doing, or were you kind of on your own doing that research about what, the next step should be?
Yeah, I feel like a naturally like a team came together, right? So like I was living in LA at the time, and so I had my neurologist at UCLA, and that perspective, and then I worked with an Ayurvedic medicine doctor, so the more herbal, more natural perspective.
Yeah.
And then I had family members that rallied around me. It was a scary time. It's like I'm sure you've maybe witnessed through a family member. It's a very scary
Yeah.
thing, and it's not even on your radar until a doctor is telling you that you probably have this.
Right.
So everyone just like check out this book and maybe check out this doctor's story. So, I discovered like Dr. Terry Walls and like dove in onto like her protocol and like the powers of food and the right herbs and movement through my Ayurvedic doctor, and learning about like Wim Hof and like breathing
Mm,
techniques and cold exposure can be helpful for like keeping chronic inflammation down and helping boost sleep. So just diving in like that and watching every podcast I could on, health related influencers or like Dr. Huberman, whoever it might be, just like
yeah.
give me as much information so I can put my own like perspective together and combine it all. And like that's what I did essentially. So when it comes to food, like I don't like labels on stuff, right? So I'm not like I'm keto or it's a paleo, or it's just
Sure.
like just eating real food and approaching it like really prioritizing that stuff, and ditching all the ways I was doing before, and movement. Just it's a lot of like common sense stuff, I guess. At the end of the day, it's like prioritize getting some good sleep and moving your body and eating the right foods, and all that kind of stuff that's at our access, and like maybe should be more of a thought process. But to your original point, like combining all those things, and I just never looked back, so
Yeah.
I went full on into it, and it changed my life incredibly. So I haven't had any like symptoms. There's been no like flare up thing. Sometimes it's really hard. I'm like, do I have this? Do I not have, like, I live in this
Right.
limbo state where I don't feel a part of the community, because I can't say like, yep, I was completely diagnosed. And then the other part is like, you were on your way, but I think you stopped it from progressing, right? Not, you
Yeah.
didn't reverse it. It doesn't mean like it went away. It's you stopped progression early
Yeah.
enough. So yeah, like a team rallied around me during that time, including my wife too, of course. And I just took it all and just ran with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you don't have any symptoms. I think
Yeah.
sometimes like life doesn't give us accidents. I'm a firm believer in that. So maybe it was
Yeah.
creating this perfect storm where you could get into this crazy world.
Oh, totally. Like
Who
blessing in
knows?
disguise, like threw me in the other direction. So
For sure.
it was a great thing in retrospect.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you started with just walking every single day. A lot of people, when they're even getting into running, thinking about running in the beginning, do that anyways because it's just
Right.
kind of building time on your feet. So did you find that over time, doing that every day, like you were noticing anything fitness wise that was
Yeah.
improving?
Yeah, like just walking daily. And I breach this carefully, like, because I think like when we talk about things like weight loss, let's say, okay,
Yeah.
it can be a sensitive subject, and I spent my entire life dealing with that and being bullied and dealing with everything that comes with maybe those types of feelings. But I was a solid like 80 pounds heavier than I am today. And
Hmm.
um, one thing I noticed was like I was just losing weight, and I was like, I'm not doing all the things I thought I needed to do before. And it wasn't even on my mind. I was like, I just want to like fix this thing, and I'm walking. But it was a change in the food and the walking combination. So that happened pretty rapidly. And that was just through walking. And then, of course, like mental health stuff, like the combo of like eating the right foods and just doing daily walks, like just mentally and physically was like a game changer. So I think it sets you up on a path to be like, you're putting, to relate it to running, like it puts you into a routine of like, I am going to put on those shoes today and go for that walk. And I now live in Boise, Idaho, and it could be snowy out, and it could be rainy, it could be 28 degrees. It's not,
Yeah.
and when I was training, you deal with that stuff too. And it's like, it's not an excuse. Like, put on your jacket then and go get your time in, and go get your walk on. So I think it really just sets up that, like, just that mindset of like, this is part of my daily routine. Like, this is my practice, and like movement I really care about, and I'm going to carve
Yeah.
out time. Even with kids and work and all that stuff, it's like I got to take my time to do that.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it gets easier over time too. Once it,
Totally.
like that initial part is always difficult building that
Yeah.
habit of getting outside and like moving your body, but then once I feel like you're in a groove of it, then it
Yeah.
kind of feels bad to not do that thing.
Oh, of course.
You're
Yeah.
missing it when
Totally.
you're not doing it. So,
Yeah. Big time agree.
um cool. And
Yeah.
then that 2 mile run. So you had that first run or that first time where you were like, let me go for a run, and it felt good.
Yeah.
Were you immediately hooked on running from there, or what was
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like going through
Oh
your
yeah.
head at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely hooked on it right away, like after that first 2 mile run. Like
Yeah.
the goal was just like just go and like I'll do a loop and then I'll track it. Like I forget, I was Strava, I think, to see how far I went. So I was like, okay, it's 2 miles. I didn't have to stop one time. So like that like got me like really energized. It's the first time I felt like I could do, longer run. And on my app it was like I was like 9 minutes and 53 seconds or something. And like to me, I was like blown away with that information. I was like, this is, oh my God, I was in the nines and I didn't have to stop. Like I'm gonna go in. So like, I don't think you need to go buy like the top performing shoes or whatever, but I went and got like, I'm gonna take it serious. I'm gonna go get some new shoes. I'm gonna go start running. But like from that first run, it hooked me and I went like all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what were you thinking you were going to be doing from there? Like was racing even on the mind at that point, or were you
Mm.
just like, I'm just going to get out and I'm just going to start running whatever feels good at that point?
Yeah, that was it. It's just like whatever feels good, and I'm big on like it was a mental booster as well, right? So like just a good playlist and going out on a run and just moving your
Yeah.
body like that. No matter how daunting it is to start, it's so satisfying afterwards. So that feeling like I got hooked on pretty quickly. But yeah, that was just a mindset, and then I don't know how it came onto my radar. Probably just watching like running influencers or YouTube videos on it to be like I'm a big fan of like Casey Neistat, and he's an
Yeah.
OG YouTuber, and he always he's done marathons over the years, and he put out like a marathon video, and it might have been that video that like I was like, oh, like I feel very inspired. I
Yeah.
don't remember if it was it exactly, but I was watching content as well that like led to that decision of like I think I'm going to try and sign up for a race.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Cool. And so we're starting to kind of like it was on your radar, I guess you could
yeah.
say. And then were you just running like 2 miles and then maybe doing 3 one weekend and doing 4? Like what did all that look like? How were you
Yeah,
progressing?
just slowly building it up and just doing like my own chart. So it'd be like, I did that 2 mile and then exactly like, all right, this time I'm going to try and go three. And then, really staying in that hovered like 2 to 3 for a little bit. Before just slowly trying to do it. Like, doing my first 6 mile, I was like, oh my God, I did 6 miles today. Like, can you
Yeah.
believe it? Then I remember like my first 8 mile was like, oh, like I never thought I would be able to run this much. So I just slowly built that up before I even decided like I think I'm going to sign up for a race, and then I was very much in between. Do I do a half? Should I just go for it? Do a full? So I ended up doing both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like slowly building it up, like a gradual build, feeling confident each run a little bit more, and then a little bit more secure. Like it's okay, I can do it. I have my water bottle. All those feelings you have. Like what if I get too far? When do I need to turn back or whatever? But yeah, so it slowly built it up over time.
Cool. Cool. And then the half marathon, I imagine you ran the half before the full, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I did a half, which I don't think I recommend this, like especially like as a beginner. So I'm a beginner runner over here. And I know there's people out there that are doing marathon after marathon. So I signed up for a half marathon, and I signed up for at the same time a marathon exactly 2 weeks after that. So I did a
So
half,
pretty
and then
close.
2 Saturdays after I did my full. And yeah, I wouldn't really recommend that, but that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And were you using any sort of training plan once you signed up for the half marathon? Did you find like any resources to follow, or were you kind of just doing your own thing?
I was definitely just doing my own thing. I didn't like really put a plan into place until I started thinking about tapering off, and then I like dove in and created like a Google sheet for that based on like watching some videos of people doing it. But I kind of did my own thing, and one thing that really helped, and I'm not trying to like I understand like it can get very expensive. Like if you get into running, like the running shoes are expensive and you're only supposed to wear them X of miles. And do you want one of the watches and all the stuff? But when I did get my watch, I didn't have it before. I was like doing Strava and carrying my phone and all plugged up like this. I was like, I got to change something. So
Yeah.
the watch helped me though. So I got a Garmin and like one of the basic models, the Forerunner 165. But that really helps because it tracks and then it starts to get to know you, and then it recommends running, and then I would pair that with what I think I should be doing and adding a certain amount. So I kind of did my own thing, but my watch probably really helped just because it was giving me data that I was doing and like recommending things based on that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Garmin suggestions actually from time to time, especially when
Yeah.
you're like maybe building up your own plan or
Yeah.
manipulating a plan or in an off season or something like that. I think
Totally.
it actually has some decent suggestions, so that's cool.
I agree. Yeah, and like some of it helped me like with tempo runs. So I was like, I didn't really
Yeah,
know how to approach those, and like to be like, oh, you're going too fast, or you're going too slow, and hear that in real time. Like it was really helpful.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. You learn so much training
totally.
for your first race.
Yeah,
So for that first half marathon, I feel like there's always a point for your first race where you realize, wow, I can actually do this thing. Like I can wrap my head around this distance of 13 miles. Did you
yeah,
have a point like that where you felt like, okay, I think I can do this?
yeah. I think during my training, I felt like I think I maybe went up to 10 miles at that point. Maybe a little bit longer. I don't really remember, but within the race, it was just you're gonna get out there and like within the energy of being around other people who are all up way too early, standing at a start line, cold, like going to do this thing. It's really empowering to be around that and the natural
Yeah,
energy, like you're trying to be like, oh, I got to be in my pace to keep it steady, and so you're naturally going to move faster, all that stuff. But I think, you know, come mile, it sounds far in, but like come mile 8, those first three for me, I don't know about for you or other listeners, but like that first 3 miles is always kind of like, huh. But then when I hit mile 3, magic always happens. And then so like,
absolutely.
yeah, so from like 3 on, and then a magic number for me on that half was like 8, where I'm like, I'm ready to push. I'm trying to think about time and everything, and I'm going hard. Was probably that 8 mile.
Cool. No, I
Yeah.
100% agree with you. I think they say like don't trust the first mile. I would probably
Yeah.
say don't trust the first three.
Totally. First three.
Don't quit.
Yeah, that said, I did one time. I don't know if you get runner's high or whatever, and
Yeah.
it could be pretty magical. And I teared up on my marathon from it and all that. But I was like, I just started my run, and the right song came on, and like it hit me immediately, and I was like, I'm not even close to my first mile. So, but yes, on standard, I think that first three, once you get past that, it's like it's smooth sailing usually.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since it's so like recent, I'm curious, like the first time that you got to experience that running high. Do you
Hmm.
remember when that was? And like, can you walk through what that felt like,
Yeah.
I guess, for some
Yeah.
newer runners?
Yeah, it's like it's a good feeling. I hear like a lot of people be like like when do I feel that thing, and it just like kind of naturally happen. And I think when you start adding in those miles, I'm big on music with running, and music that feels like it's my right tempo, and like hit a flow. So I think it's a combo. But yeah, I like I said, I live in Boise, so I'd run a lot along what's called the Green Belt, and it's along the river.
Mm,
It's super beautiful. You feel like you're in nature the whole time, and it can go far, so you can like put some good miles in. Um, but yeah, just the water, and it hit, and I threw my arms in the air, and I probably looked like a crazy person, just being like, "This is amazing!" And I think I did a 360 circle and kept going on my run. But it's a pretty euphoric feeling, and I don't want to sound like so like wild about it, but I remember that was the first moment, and just being like, "This is really emotional." And it hits in a different place where like no matter what, this has to be a great thing that I'm doing,
for sure.
to feel this way so naturally, almost like childlike or something, like gave me like reminiscent of like childhood feelings.
Yeah.
It felt good. So yeah.
It's hard to explain unless you've
Yeah.
actually felt it, but no, I
Right.
think that's a great way to put it. It's like, I always joke around that running's not fun when you start running. It's
Yeah.
like it hurts, you're sore, you're putting your body through something completely new. It's a
Yeah.
mental struggle, but then you hit this hump where once you're over it
Yeah.
and running starts to get a little bit easier, and you can focus like internally and listen to your music and like
Yep.
actually not feel like you're dying the entire time.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unreal, and I feel like that's when a lot of people, they have that feeling, and then that's it for them. You can't run away from running
Yeah. Yeah.
from
You
there.
could, like kind of can't turn it off. And I always refer similar, like I would say like running sucks until it doesn't. And you
Yeah,
just got to
exactly.
get past that point, and it's difficult to do because it's like I don't want to do this, and why am I doing this? And then but once you get past that point, like I did a run today, and it's been a little bit smoky here from some wildfires, so I
Mm,
haven't been running consistently, but I did a run today. I'm like, I'll just go do the same loop, my first one, my 2 mile, and I just go do it, and it's like, all right, 8 minute 35-second pace. Like it's like you don't lose it too. Like once you kick it in and you have that thing, it's like, oh, it's that good feeling. And so once you get past all that stuff and you do find that groove, it's a wonderful thing. It's like me time. It's like I'm gonna go out,
absolutely.
put on my music, and I'm gonna go just like not be disturbed and be in my thoughts and go run.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic thing once you get past that initial hurdle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to stick with it. So
You have to
stick
stick
with
with
it
it. That's the hard part. Is consistency with it. Yeah.
for sure. For sure. Well, cool. I don't know if we mentioned which races you decided on for your half and your full, but how did you make the decision to run the ones that you ended up choosing?
Yeah, I figured A, B, these are my first ones, and the easiest way I get like a lot of that like natural anxiety of like, do you wake up on time? Like how, so I was like, it's if I do something local, that's gonna be my best shot, right? Like to not deal with any of those feelings. And then when you're training, there's a lot of you know, like I wouldn't want fatigue or a bad night's sleep, and you naturally maybe are a little excited, so you're not gonna sleep as much as you would normally. So that just eliminated like travel ideas, like go do an LA marathon or a bigger one. It's like, no, I'll just do something local, make sure I can even do this thing. So that led me to doing my local races. So my half was the Boise River Marathon, and the full was the famous Idaho Potato Marathon. Silly name, but it's a legit one, and it was really fun, and it's a qualifier for Boston.
Oh, cool.
So that's what led me to those two races. Just
Okay,
keeping it
cool.
local.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's smart. Yeah,
yeah,
the logistics of like some of these major marathons and
totally.
traveling to some of these bigger races is just like it's too much for your
It's a
first one
lot. It's a
sometimes.
lot. Yeah, and I think for your first one, like I would love to do like the Austin one. I hear it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
But like the way I get it, like I'm like I would need to come in like a good solid few days ahead to really get in my flow, and
yeah,
not everybody can find that time and carve out. So I just say like if you can find a local race, that's probably your best bet.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then you said that between your half marathon, so you did your first half marathon. I guess
hmm
before we talk about the in between, how did the half marathon go? Was it everything you hoped for? It was your first race experience, right?
Yep, my first race experience, it was awesome. And I've heard someone say, and I think I would probably agree with this, like the half marathon, I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was probably in a video I watched. A half marathon is really about like your running and your speed and stuff like that. And a full marathon's like more about nutrition and like
Mm,
your energy and all that stuff. So with the half, like it felt great. Like I felt like I knew come mile 13, like I knew I can get there. I knew like if I wanted to push it, I'd be okay because it's not like you're gonna have to do another 13 right after that.
sure.
So it felt great. Like my pace, I think was like 7 minutes 41 seconds.
Dang, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and finishing hard. And what I love so much though about it was I was really surprised with the amount of people that are just so supportive. So like if like a guy was passing me, I'm like, dude, this guy's fast. He was like fist bumping me before passing, just as like a you're doing great too, and firing up people along the way together. And so that energy, so like that first experience was like that's everything I could have hoped for. Like I did it successfully in my mind. I was able to go fast and like go prove I could do this thing. And at the same time, the communal aspect was just like really contagious and like a really great thing to be around. So it went well. I was definitely sore after that. That's why I wouldn't recommend maybe a second one so quickly after that. But it was good. It was fun. A lot of
Yeah.
fun. It really felt very fast, but it was fun.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was the course? Was it pretty hilly, pretty flat? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was flat for the most part. Very windy out that day and
Mm,
cold. But it was flat. For the half marathon was mostly flat, and then along the river and looping around and stuff like that.
perfect for your first
Yeah,
one. Yeah. You don't want
first one.
don't want any major hills for your
Yeah,
first
no
one.
major
Build some
hills. Yeah,
confidence.
totally. And like with training, it was like I went through the whole weather thing and all of that. I'd be like, man, it's really cold or it's raining. And when I was like, all right, so then I can run in any of these aspects. And if it's a beautiful sunny day, it'll give me like maybe an advantage how I feel for myself.
Yeah.
So with the wind, it was a flat course, but like very windy and cold. I'm like, I've trained in this before, so it's fine, So that
Yeah.
I think was also helpful.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you said that you started to kind of think about like taper in between. What did all of that look like between the half and the full?
Yeah, just slow tapering. I watched a couple of running videos, like suggestions on tapering, and that was really confusing and it was hard. And because I was doing the half and then 2 weeks later the full, so I had to make sure my taper made sense to hit a half in between to naturally be like, oh, you would be about mile 13 or so by the time you get to your full. So I just put like a Google sheet together, basically like a 3 week plan or something like that to just slowly start doing it. I don't remember exactly like what that was, but
Yeah.
that helped me. I'm very visual, so it helped me to have something like that I could look at and like check off, and slowly taper down. And it feels very backwards. Definitely, it's like I feel
Yeah.
like tapering's pretty hard, but it's definitely so necessary. So it's a great thing to like take seriously. I think out of all of it, like you kind of like stay loose with your training or whatever. But the tapering was a big one for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no one way to get to a marathon. So we'll
Right.
we'll preface this next question with that. But I am curious. A lot of people will talk about like for their first marathon the mental hurdle of not running like
Yeah.
a 18-mile run or a 20-mile run or
Yeah.
22-mile run, whatever the top that you get to is. With you, was 13 your top?
No, the longest run I did was before the marathon was like 18, just over
18.
18.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So that leaves a lot of unknown miles there. Was
Right.
that even a thought in your mind
Oh,
of
totally.
like what's the rest of this race going to look like? Or yeah, how did that feel mentally?
Yeah, mentally, it's like pretty scary, and
Yeah.
I took it very serious because I was like, it's just going to be me on that start line. So like anything I do from now till then is going to affect it, and I don't want to like be on a run and like hurt myself because I didn't train properly or something. So it left a lot of those miles unknown. So that felt daunting to where I was like, I don't even know if I can actually technically finish. I've never ran that far. So there's that. And then if I can I do it in a time that maybe I would love to achieve or something, all those things. And then you hear about like the wall at mile 20.
Yeah.
So it was definitely like a thing I thought about of like, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this. And then as you gradually are going, you're like, I think I'll be able to get there. You start discovering it mile by mile.
Yeah, you do prove it to yourself along the way for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
After that 18-mile run, how were you feeling? Like what was it a pretty successful run? Like any hiccups on that last one? That's usually like the decision maker on how you're going to feel for race day.
I felt great. I remember I'm 39, still call my mom every single day. I called her after that run because I ran the whole thing. So I didn't stop along the way. I don't care about time or anything like that. This is just like trying to do like a 2 hour run basically. And I called her and I was like, we used to do this drive when I was growing up, and it was about 2 hours to go see family, like maybe 2.5 hours. I was like, I just ran nonstop for the first time ever, and it'd be like we got in the car and we did that drive that we always did growing up, to get there, like to just conceptually think about it. So I felt great. My legs were very sore. They were crampy, but I felt really good mentally, knowing like I could do it. That's where like you get that confidence too, where I was like, I think I could do this because I've heard enough. Like if you can hit like maybe running for 2 hours, that's like a good baseline to say like you'll probably be able to go do your marathon.
Yeah.
So it felt good. It felt like a huge achievement, but it felt very daunting when I was done. And those last from I think it was mile 16 to finish the 18, I was like, this is pretty brutal right now. It's the furthest I
Yeah.
ever put on my body.
For sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if you felt like this, but for my first marathon, every single milestone that I hit, it would be this sense of like, okay, cool, I did that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I still have all these other miles and I'm
I
gonna have to
know.
run. Every single
Totally.
milestone was like, I'm so proud of myself,
Yep.
but there's more
Totally.
miles to be
But
run.
there's more miles, and yeah, and like that's that thing too. It's like every time when you're inching up, you're like, whoa, that's the longest run I've ever done before. And then you do the next one, it's like, whoa, that's the longest I've ever done before. So yeah, it's all fun to like categorize that in your mind along the way for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cool mental game that you get to go through for your first one for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, let's fast forward a little bit closer to
Yeah.
race day. So week of, we know that you didn't have to travel too far for this
hmm
marathon. What were there any logistics that you were going to have to take into account for this one, like start time, anything like that?
No, start time just like the logistics are like I have kids, so I'm like big
Yeah,
on sleep, and I'm like, oh my gosh, before race day, like will that be a thing? Like my daughter go through some sleep regression and all that kind of stuff. So logistics wise, like that was on my mind. Other than that, I was just driving myself to the marathon early on, for my family to meet me at the finish line. And so logistics were pretty simple. It was really, I think, like the most daunting thing, like leading up to that marathon, is just thinking about nutrition. I had a lot of
hmm
thoughts on my mind of like not running out of energy along my run. And I don't eat things like grains and like refined carbs and stuff. So it's really hard to find carb loading and all that stuff. So I was eating a lot of sweet potatoes and Japanese sweet
Mm,
potatoes and stuff to like help fuel that up.
yeah.
But that was probably the most daunting thing before the marathon was just like nutrition, because I ran out of energy once, like along my training, and I shut down. I was like, crap, like this just happened to me. And I had to turn around and walk the whole way back.
Mm,
So I was like very afraid of that happening. But other than
yeah.
that, like logistics were pretty simple.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for that run where you said that you kind of like bonked out a little bit, was it because of was it because of nutrition from the run itself, like gels and stuff like that, or do you think it was from what you did to prepare for that run?
I think it was what I like didn't do to prepare for the run
Gotcha.
properly. And I felt it on, I think I felt it like at mile 4, and I was like, oh
Mm,
no, I think like this is gonna, I could really feel it in my body in a way like I've never
right.
felt. And then you push it a little bit, and then you just got it's like also like listen to your body, right? Like, and I was like, call it quits. Like, don't go injure yourself. Like, just turn around. And I felt like, here I go, walk of shame, walking all the way back, all geared out, but it's okay. Like, I just didn't properly think about my nutrition before that run,
Yeah.
or maybe the night before or whatever it was to lead up to feeling that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have do you have a go-to like pre-run meal that you typically go for that you took to marathon day with you?
Yeah, I love like protein, and I love medjool dates. So like before a run, I don't want to be like overly full by any means. So I
Yeah.
love to get like a couple of medjool dates and maybe like a couple pieces of chicken or something with maybe a little bit of avocado, and a gel or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And then before race day, on both of them, so I guess it'd be like my routine was just a couple of burger patties that I'd make. So lots of protein covered in avocado, couple of medjool dates, and like half an apple or something like that. And like other than that, like I was thinking about the nutrition the days leading up to where like I know I had plenty going on, but
For
before the
sure.
actual race, like something like that.
Cool. Cool. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So race day rolls around.
Yeah.
And then thinking about like during run fuel as well. Did you have a strategy like I'm going to take gels every 30 minutes or every 45 minutes or every 3 miles? Did you have a strategy that you were hoping to execute?
Yeah, basically it was like for the full, it was, I think I approached it the same way on each, was a gel by like every mile 4. So every 4 miles making sure to get a gel. And I don't remember the time, but that worked out somewhere between like 30 to 45 minutes, which is usually I think most people will recommend.
Yeah.
So I like went and bought like shorts that would be able to carry all these gels and make sure, because on a full marathon that's quite a bit. And I think I ended up with like one extra and not needing it. But yeah, my strategy was basically every 4 miles ensuring I had a gel, and not being shy of doing like mile 3, I'm gonna hit that thing instead or whatever, making
Yeah.
sure to get it before my body's really needing it.
Yeah.
And that seemed to work out well. Like that timed well with like the entire race and feeling like I had fuel the whole way.
Yeah. That's so important. I'm glad you said that. Just like
Yeah.
making sure that you're fueling before you feel like you have to.
Yeah,
If your
definitely.
body's hungry, you probably waited a little bit too
Yep,
long. So
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
totally. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like you could be on about to hit mile 8 and not feel like you need a gel, scarf it down anyway. Like,
Yeah.
so definitely before your body feels it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, let's break down race day. I'm excited to hear how it went.
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk about, since you had a half marathon under your belt at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe let's just break down the first 13. How was the first half of the race for you?
First half of the race was really good. It felt it felt like I was going slow, so I was like really conscious of like not pushing it. So this is going to be the biggest amount of miles I've ever ran. For most people on race day, it's probably the same, but biggest mile I've ever done. So really wanted to pace myself, unlike I did with the half. I let myself go faster than I thought I should. Those first 13 though felt really good. That mile 3, I hit runner's high. I made like a video on this, and like I talk about crying. I was like, I just finished crying, and it's like, so like that mile 3 that happened. Um, and I think mile 13 felt really good because it's like, all right, I'm at the halfway point, and that felt like this is where the work is going to really start, because I was
Sure.
already confident. I knew I could do the first 13, and that 6 to 8 feels really good. Like you were just really dialed in and going on a flow. So first 13 were smooth and easy. Had my gels, playlist on, the whole thing. And it felt pretty easy to accomplish it. And I was holding myself back, making sure not to let myself, no matter how good I was feeling right now, to push further than I think I should be based on like where I want to get at the end.
For
So
sure.
I was like keeping it nice and mellow that first 13.
Cool. Yeah, and I should have asked this before, but how big this was? This is a pretty big race in Idaho, right? Do you
Yeah.
remember how many people, give or take, there
Oh,
were at this one?
man, there's a lot. I think the full marathon, I'm gonna so misquote it, but like, man, I don't even want to misquote. I think full marathon, maybe in my category, was like 1,500 or something like
Yeah,
that.
pretty
And
big.
yeah, it's a big one. So it's like the bigger one that everyone kind of does. It goes out for, and because it's a Boston qualifier, so like a lot of people are out
Yeah,
there doing that one. But it was much bigger than the first one I did, the Boise River.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
How was the crowd support compared to your half with the a big race like that?
both awesome crowd support.
Yeah.
The full marathon, just a lot more people. So that finish line was like packed full of people. Like it's the whole thing, like the ones you see like on the videos and stuff like that. Um, Crowd support though, awesome on both ends. And people trickled throughout, not as much as like at the end, of course, but it's also like crowd support at the end is like, you just like kind of like not to jump ahead, but on my full, I like blacked out like before crossing the finish line because I just like took off again. I just had this whole new boost of
Yeah.
energy, just seeing the crowd and knowing it was there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it really does. It gives you that boost of energy. You have to
totally.
at the finish line it's okay. You can push, you're almost done, but
Yeah.
sometimes the crowd hits when you're at like mile 13,
Oh
14 and you're
yeah.
like, "Oh boy, I got to I got to
I
reel
know.
it back here."
Yeah, exactly. About to run by this crowd. I don't like need to look exhausted right now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Well, cool. Well, let's talk about maybe like 14 to 20 because I know 20 to 26 sometimes can be its own animal. So, how
Yeah.
was it feeling when you were starting to get into less familiar territory, I guess you could say?
Yeah, 14 to 20 still felt pretty good until I got to like 20.
Yeah.
So I felt, I was like definitely heard about like hitting the wall at mile 20 or like the other things like some people say like the marathon really starts at mile 20, like, so it's a whole different beast there. I felt good and I felt strong, but I noticed like come that time, like I could definitely feel like my legs fatigue.
Mm,
So they were starting to get a little bit crampy and just like a little bit sore in areas where I didn't really feel it the whole way up. Um, so mentally still feeling strong and good, but I was like physically, I'm like, oh, I can tell like I've been running a very long distance right now and I'm feeling the thing at mile 20.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but 14, 16, 18, all that stuff along there, like still felt smooth sailing.
Good. Yeah. So
Yeah.
majority of the marathon under your belt, you were feeling pretty solid at that
Yeah,
point.
definitely.
Yeah. Cool. So mile 20 comes around.
Yeah.
I think for everybody, whether you're running the race of your life or you're, not it's not your day. Mile 20 comes around and it still hits you like a ton of bricks. So,
It sure does.
how were you feeling physically, mentally? Like what was going through your head at that point?
Yeah, mile 20 through 20, like, just to finish was like mentally like listen to your body, keep going. Big on playlists, like I said, so just making sure I'm hearing the right songs at that time, which also I would love to note if you could build a playlist and the right songs are coming at the miles you think that they'll hit, that was like a big one for me. So after the
Yeah.
halfway point, like the playlist shifted into like music I needed to like feel like energized. But yeah, just a lot of like keep it going, but don't be afraid to listen to my body. So there was a couple of moments where I'm like, I gotta stop for a second and just like walk. So like at mile 20, I think it might have been 21, there was a water station. And I was not afraid to say like, I'm gonna stop to drink this water versus like try to run with it. Cause at that point I hadn't done a single stop. So that 20 to those last few miles, it was really like, don't be afraid to like if you need to stop for a second, do that, hydrate, and then keep going, but just keep going. So that was the
Yeah.
whole mental aspect.
Did you bring water with you, like in a handheld or anything like that, or were you mostly relying on the aid stations for that
Aid
race?
stations.
Yeah.
So and I went through during all my training big fear on like not having a water with me. And I even ran with the body early on. I think we're doing like a 10K. He's like, like technically you don't need your water like at whatever. He's like, but if you're doing it for training, like absolutely do whatever you're going to do on race day. So it was a big leap to not have my water bottle with me, but
Hmm.
I felt confident enough. Like I dialed in on like, do I really need it? Do I really need it? Based on the aid stations, I think I'll be okay. So I attempted with no water on my half, and I was like, I was totally fine the whole way. I'm going to do the same thing for the full.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Was that like where the aid station? I feel like those big races don't typically have any problems, but
yeah.
were they spaced out enough where you felt like when you needed something like you could get it, or were there ever any points where you like, shoot, I could really use an aid station right now?
No, they felt spaced out in the right amount. I think in the half marathon, which is a smaller one, it wasn't probably as frequent. But it still wasn't an issue. And but in the full, it was like every like 3 to 4 miles there was an aid station,
That's great.
and it was like that's plenty. Like I
Yeah.
felt like totally fine and never like parched or anything along the way because of that.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
making sure to just take it, like not passing one up for the next thing, and just take a little bit, even if I'm doing a tiny bit and not the full little cup. Like just get it in.
Anything. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So then finish line. I
Yeah,
know your family was posted up at the end. Did you get to
yeah.
see them? Sometimes like the finish line, like you said, you black out a little bit. You don't get to see them. Did you get to see your family at the
Yeah, I
end?
got to see them. I think they were like
Good.
on part of the end course, probably maybe where you're not supposed to stand, but it was like my
Sure.
wife and my son and my daughter, and then a buddy of mine brought his kids out to like come be supportive too. So he got some great video of me coming through.
Cool.
But yeah, like when I was like trying to slow down from running through, they were right there. So I got to like pick up my son, and I was like, oh my, I couldn't believe I was like finishing. But yeah, I got to see them, and they're immediately there for me crossing the finish line.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
What was
awesome.
the feeling like? Yeah, you said that you like maybe I blacked out as well, so I
Yeah,
can't blame you
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
But did you get to feel the feeling of like I just accomplished that at the time that you crossed the finish line?
yeah, definitely. So like it was like blacking out and finding a whole new source of energy, like knowing it's right there. Like, when there's nothing like coming around a corner and like, oh, I can see the finish line. I'm gonna get through this thing. So just I sprinted through. And part of me like I don't even remember doing that, but like finishing through, I was conscious enough where I was like, I grabbed my son. I'm like, I can't believe it. I'm like, oh my God. And I let out some belt or whatever, and I got handed my medal. Um, so yeah, like, all the feelings of like, I just finished this thing. And then it was like pretty quickly, like, now what? Like, do I need to go walk
Yeah.
around? Like, you
Yeah.
just exerted so much energy and like so mental focus. It feels really weird to just stop.
Yeah. You're like I didn't think this far ahead.
Yeah, just stop and like go get in my car and drive home now. Like that
Yeah,
seems
that's it.
really weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I got to go through the whole thing at the finish line. It was like such an awesome experience. Yeah.
Good, good. It didn't sound like you. I mean, unless you didn't mention it, but it doesn't seem like you experienced any like major cramping or anything like that for the run. Did it hit you at the end, or you were pretty smooth in that department?
I was pretty smooth, like from the half marathon to the full marathon, I felt like in my upper thigh, like maybe I had stretched or like tore something in the very tiny way where I'm like, I can feel it. So
Mm,
there was that I dealt with before the full, which made me super nervous, but it was fine enough to go do it, and I didn't over pull anything or whatever.
cool.
But yeah, the last few days, I felt my legs those last 6 miles or whatever, and then the next few days definitely like sitting down and trying to walk around is like it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah,
But during the race, it stayed pretty consistently good, and I think whatever you can do to like tap into those things, whether they do work or don't. Like for me, it's like I really prioritize the sleep along the way. Like I took it as serious as I get like really big on mental things. So I'm like, I'm going to do a marathon. So I'm calling myself an athlete and like pretending and like, so I'm going to do what an athlete would need to do in training. And so that meant like my nutrition was dialed in, my sleep was dialed in. And I think that really helped me come race day and stuff to just feel like I'm fully prepared. Like I'm good.
yeah.
My body's ready to like just be activated in this way, to get through it.
I love that mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when you let the doubt start to creep in through training, especially,
Yeah.
you can do yourself a disservice. Like I know you didn't run with like a pack yourself or anything like that, but I
Yeah.
hear a lot of people who won't get a hydration pack for training or won't get like a nice water bottle for training because they're like,
Yeah.
I'm not a runner. I don't deserve to have all these nice
Oh
things.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like you kind of have to trick yourself into that mindset and then you work your way into it.
Yeah.
Um, it's not like you're gonna do
100%.
yourself a disservice by being over prepared, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and everyone's a runner, you know? Like if you can
Yeah.
get up and run, you're a runner. And like, you don't have to be like in the top cool gear and doing the thing and certainly some of that like the technology on the shoes is like I wore like the Nike Air Zoom whatever Fly. I forget, I don't even remember the name, but like the really bouncy, cool looking highlighter ones, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, I would never wear those on my marathon. I want something comfortable and squishy. And I went with some Hokas. But you also like you don't have to buy into that stuff or feel like you're not a runner, so you shouldn't have it. And not to be off tangent, but like that day I like bonked on training and I walked. Part of me is like walk of shame. I'm in my gear. I got my thing. I got my bottle. I got my shorts, my Hokas. And here I am walking. Like I felt like someone's gonna be like, look at this guy. Like he's walking like all geared out like a runner.
Right.
Who cares? Like, do what works for you.
Yeah.
Go get that water bottle. Go get the shoes that make you feel good, that are right for your body, and like forget the rest.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Well, cool. So what were you thinking after the marathon? Like either you think you're usually thinking like one and done, or you're thinking,
Yeah,
let me start thinking about what I'm going to do next. So
yeah.
what was going through your head after the race?
No, I got a lot of that. So like after the race, I had some friends being like, "So what's next? You gonna do triathlons? You gonna like you've already done the marathon?" I'm like, "Maybe a sprint. I don't know." And he's like, "No, you can do more than that." Um, and I definitely fueled up like I'm a marathon person now. Like I'm gonna go do this one, and then I want to go do the LA one. I'm gonna travel around. And I think I've dialed back. I don't feel one and done at all. I feel very fired up about it, but I think I've landed more in I would love to do achievements like that maybe once a year.
Hmm.
And but I'm more like the maintenance of it. So I feel like I mentioned, I think before we started, but like I'm doing a lot of strength training right now and hiking with weighted backpacks and yoga and hot yoga and stuff like that. So I want to be able to right now just be like at any time if I want to get up and go do a half marathon or like a 10K, I'm ready to go do that. And then
Yeah.
you need real training to like be like I'm going to go do a full marathon and like not hurt yourself probably, but so I think I'm more in that mode. I would love to like keep doing the halves just to like prove to myself you're there and you're good and you can go do that
Yeah.
thing and it's really fun to get in the community and be a part of it and infectious. But I went from I'm gonna do this all year long. I'm gonna do like 4 a year and all that stuff to being like, wait, dial it back. Like maybe
Yeah.
approach it differently and don't overdo yourself. And you did check it off. I don't feel one and done. I love running, so it's a part of my routine definitely. But it seems it's a lot to go into the mindset to be like I'm gonna go do this thing and really get through it. And it takes a lot of time, and you have to carve out the time to be like no matter what, I have to run today. It's part of
Yeah.
the training schedule. I got to get out and do it. I got to make the time. So I think a balance more than anything. So somewhere in the middle to answer your question and the long-winded
Yeah.
answer, somewhere right in the middle.
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
that's great because then
Yeah.
you get to kind of like all of this is going to help you with future marathon training. Whenever you
Hmm.
decide to come back to it, you're going to be a more well-rounded runner,
Yep. Yep.
doing all of these cross training things and all
Totally.
of that. So, no, I think it's great. And I
Yeah.
always reiterate, like everybody's goals are different. So if your goal is to run 6 marathons in a year, power to you. If your
Totally.
goal is to run
Totally.
one, we put these goals on ourselves. So that's
100%.
all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And just getting up and going for a run. Awesome. Right then
Yeah,
and there.
great. You did it.
I did a small 2 miles today and I'm like, I feel so accomplished. I did those 2 miles, so
Absolutely.
it's great.
Cool. Well, if you could offer any advice from this journey you've gone on for the last 4 or 5 months, from basically getting involved with walking and then running and then
Mhm.
first marathon, what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe thinking about signing up for their first race right now?
I would say it would come back to like if you're thinking about signing up for your first race, like you should just sign up for your first race. Like definitely. Like don't overthink this thing. Like just sign up and you signing up is going to force yourself to be committed to getting that end result of going and doing your first race. And that was similar to like I'm just going to go on a run and try and do this. And I was blown away with that achievement of those 2 miles, not having to stop. And that led me to be like, go do a race, and all these things. So I think if you're thinking about doing your first race, just sign up and get a race on the books. And I think walking, if you're not out on a run, like walking is a fantastic form of movement. It's really wonderful for the body. And it's something, like I said, like put me on a just like this is a part of my daily routine. Like I get up and I go move my body.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think like for me, it was like I mentioned, I think like if you're thinking about like really wanting to do this and all that, like I'm big on nutrition. So dialing in on my nutrition was huge for me, and a solid playlist. You give me those two things and I feel like I'm good to go, you know?
Yeah.
But don't overthink it. Just go have fun running, and no matter like how much you're doing, and you get to that first, and your first race could be a 5K. You know, it doesn't have to be a marathon at the end of the day. It will be a step in the journey of like being like, I just did my first marathon, you know? So just get up and get started.
Love it. Yep,
Yep.
love it. Cool. And then I like to ask this question just when I have like parents on the podcast, because I know that's
Uh-huh.
a whole other level. I don't have kids myself, but I know
Yeah.
that's a whole other level of training when you also have a family to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice you could offer like other dads that have maybe younger kids or kids that are thinking about training for a marathon?
Yeah, I think one, you have to just like you know, like my wife is very supportive. She's been a part of my journey and all that stuff. So it's like, you know, we're in a partnership where we want to make sure we each feel like we have time to like take care of ourselves. But like when you're training for a marathon, it's a whole different beast. You go on an 18-mile run, you're gone for a few hours to
Yeah,
go do a long run, you know. So like long distance running is really carving out time. Um, but I would say like my advice is like finding the space to make that time. And I know it can seem hard, and we have kids and we prioritize all the other things for all the good reasons. But I think for me, the way I look at it too is like me carving out time to go do something like this helps me feel like a better parent around my kids. And dad is doing something for himself and he's showing up for himself. And I think that's a contagious thing for the family, and it's like an important thing to do. So I think like it's good for our kids to see mom and dad carving out time to go take care of themselves or go achieve a major goal they put on themselves, you know? So I just made sure to stick to it, and we took care of each other in the household to balance those things out.
for sure. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks again for walking through your whole journey here. This is it's been great to like I said from the beginning, get a perspective with somebody whose new marathon journey is so fresh on your mind.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you just walking through your story there.
Totally.
And if anybody wants to follow along with you and what you have coming up next, where can they find you?
On all my socials, it is John Everest Health. I post a lot about like, you know, my wellness, fitness stuff, but like a lot about like nutrition, which I mentioned on here. But yeah, John Everest Health. You can find me on social media if you feel like checking me out.
Perfect. Well, I'll link
Yeah.
it too so that they can find you easily.
Awesome.
But thanks again, and we'll stay in touch. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode. If you're enjoying My First Marathon, it would mean the world to me if you could rate and review the show. And if you or someone you know has ran a marathon and would like to share your story, I have a guest form to fill out in my bio on Instagram. That username is @MyFirstMarathonPod. See you on the next one.